And Rick, I'm just
That's
wondering
right.
what your thoughts are when you hear Keir's coverage of what one specific area of Russia has dealt with as a consequence of Russia's decision to invade Ukraine. The President Trump, over the weekend said that negotiators have already discussed separating, taking parts of land, power plants, and other assets that Keir was talking about. What's on the line today?
Well, a lot is on the line, Jose. Where Keir was a strategic coup for Ukraine when they unexpectedly invaded a part of Russia successfully, which was very embarrassing to Vladimir Putin. That's the first time that has happened since World War II. And of course, the first time a major land invasion has happened since World War II was when Russia invaded Ukraine. A lot is at stake, but, you know, I know all of the mythology about President Trump as a negotiator. The problem is he kind of tells what the agreement is before he even begins the negotiations. He has basically agreed to all of Vladimir Putin's prescriptions about what he would need for a ceasefire: the refusal of Ukraine to join NATO, the possession of those 4 so-called oblasts in the Donbass east and southern region, which they more or less control now, retaining Crimea. You know, the Trump folks have already basically said that's the outline of the agreement. So I don't even really understand what the negotiation is, because you've essentially agreed to it. And I'm going to add one tiny detail, Jose, which I know from being on both sides of all of this. These phone calls between Trump and Putin, they'll say it lasted 90 minutes. 45 minutes of that is translation. And one of the things that is an advantage that Putin has in all of these negotiations is that he understands English. So he has time for his answers. When Trump says something, it then gets translated into Russian, but he understands it right away. He can have an answer. This is a big advantage that he has in all of the negotiations, his talks with Mr. Witkoff, and he has already created an outline of this agreement, which it seems like the U.S. has agreed to. I hope that's not the case. I hope the U.S. asked for some concessions from Russia. I hope Russia has to pay a penalty for invading the largest country in Europe, but I'm not optimistic about that.
Yeah, Rick, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because, you know, there is a lot of behind-the-scenes work that, for example, by the translation aspect, is going to eat up a ton of time. But that's an advantage that Putin has. It's also an advantage that President Zelensky has. Their English may be limited, but they certainly can understand major points. And I'm wondering, Rick, what you see as the importance of the fact that Europe is nowhere to be seen in any of these conversations. Even the setting of these conversations has been so far in Saudi Arabia.
Yes, it's a shame. You know, unlike what President Trump says, Europe has contributed roughly the same number of billions of dollars to support Ukraine, $80 to $100 billion that the U.S. has. Ukraine is in Europe. Europe is much more threatened by this. I would have Europe be party to these talks. I would have Mr. Zelensky party to these talks. And frankly, what they do with that Donbass region, early on in the war, there was some consideration that maybe it would become a protectorate. Maybe it would be patrolled by European troops or UN troops. I would still prefer that than it goes back to Russia. But without Europe being involved, without the UN being involved, without Zelensky being involved, that looks like something that's not going to be a reality.